welcome to another episode of the Influential Nonprofit. If you don't know me, but you probably do, I'm your host. I'm Marianne Dersch. I work with nonprofits to master the art of influence so they can ask for and receive all they want, need, and deserve without feeling ineffective, pushy, or pitchy. And I am here with my new best friend, Laura, and I hope I said Bonnell or
You
Bonnell?
did. Bonnell. Yep.
Bonnell. Oh,
Yeah,
awesome.
you did.
And we're going to talk about elevating nonprofits, why seeing nonprofits as corporations is important for change and growth. Really just elevating, I think, our mindset, how we see ourselves in our work to catapult some growth, which I think is a perfect topic for this time of
Mhm.
year. I'm very excited. Let me just share, Laura, a little bit about you, and then I'm going to go into the first question.
Sure.
So you are a journalist. You are a journalist in Detroit, and you founded the Bonnell Foundation after your daughters were born with cystic fibrosis. So you kind of got thrown into this. This was a life-changing shift for you.
Yeah, it was. But I think of it as serendipitous or whatever, because I was in radio and television and it gave me the voice and it was my passion. But I always thought I don't feel like I've hit whatever I'm supposed to be doing in this world yet. And then they were born and I thought, well, there you
There
go.
you go.
It's
Mhm.
about raising awareness about cystic fibrosis. So
Wow, yeah. And then so driven by your personal experience and this expertise, right? You started to raise funds for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation and organized events. And now you are continues to advocate for those affected by cystic fibrosis and still using your journalistic skills to amplify the cause. And so we're going to talk about all about your journey and all about this idea of like because we were just talking before I hit record about the idea of you seeing yourself as a business person like, oh, I just started this thing, like, wait, hold on, right? I'm leading a corporation and how that can shift your thinking. Okay, before we get into that, my first question is always this. Tell me something you're proud of that you don't get to brag about a lot. And I want you to dig deep, like maybe something people don't really know about you or secret hidden talent or something.
hmm. You know, actually, I guess the thing that pops into my head most right now is because more about mental health, I guess, if that's okay. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I can think of a lot of things, but when the diagnosis came of cystic fibrosis for my girls, I was always an athlete running 8 miles a day, even after I got married. I was thin as could be, like, uh, I was just, that was me all the time, working out and running. Um, and then we got diagnosed. And so when you get diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, it's a genetic disease that causes chronic and fatal lung infections and many other things we can talk about. But because of this thick, sticky mucus that's in people born with cystic fibrosis, they can't digest food. So they have to eat a
Oh,
high fat diet and take enzymes. So that meant the doctors were saying, put butter in everything, high fat diet, because they only get half the calories. So I'm eating the same food. I gained 120 pounds
wow.
and I just lost 100 and I think I'm at 112 pounds. So, or 115. I don't know, somewhere close. So I finally lost all that weight. My daughters are 27 and 30. So it's been a long time. So, and especially in the job that I did my whole life, you're out in the public and you do turn invisible when you're overweight. People just dismiss you. So I guess if somebody just met me, they would think I was thin my whole life. But I had this whole thing where I was just feeling like people just don't know me. They see me fat now. They don't know that I am thin in my head. I just have a lot of worry going on. And
Yeah.
and so I finally thought, and it's taken me 2.5 years. And I finally thought I have to get this weight off. And so that's my big accomplishment in the midst of all the crazy of life. I just said, I have to do it. It's now or never. And I honestly, I pictured myself in a casket as the large person I was, and it made me really sad. So that was,
Hmm.
I know it's all sounds crazy because, that's how I roll, but that is one of the big things.
Yeah, yeah. What a journey. Like, of course, the identity of this being one person and looking like another person, and then just kind of being in alignment with who your inner identity. Also, I also heard from that story a little bit was this idea of having a very, a body, like a very able body, and then having two daughters who don't have able body, right? And like
Right.
understanding like, wow, what it's like to do that. I think for somebody like you who was always really active, you probably couldn't even imagine or wouldn't even like even think about what it would be like to not have an able body like that.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, there are
Hmm.
so many different directions of it being, it's just medicating yourself. It wasn't alcohol, it was food, but if it was alcohol, who knows, I could be dead already. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
But,
yeah.
it's so, yeah. So it
Wow.
was a lot.
All right. So you, you started the foundation and you've been doing this, I'm assuming for a while, right? Tell me what you have found as far as seeing nonprofits as a corporation. How has this identity really shifted your work or helped you?
I think, when people respond like, oh, like, what do you do? Oh, you're just work for a foundation. It's not seen as like you're running a company, or it's just like you're just a nice person. You're just trying to help some people,
Yeah.
which is a beautiful thing. But I have employees, I have to fundraise. I'm doing absolutely everything. I have a CPA, I have an accountant, I have a bookkeeper, I have a treasurer, like everything. It's the same thing you're doing. And it's actually harder in some ways because you are a nonprofit and there you have to get grants and there's so many variables that you have to work on. And there is kind of, a stereotype or a feeling that people working for a nonprofit shouldn't make any money, So I think it needs to change because it's really important that there are foundations that are helping people in the community. Um, and I think, probably most people do know that because so many people volunteer and help and want to help others. But I just think it's a kind of an attitude we need to change where people are thinking about it more, and actually if corporations maybe connect with a nonprofit and say, we're going to commit to raising awareness for you. It doesn't even have to be money, just we want people to know you're out there, and things like that. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I think the word nonprofit, I talk about this, I've mentioned this before. I think it really does some damage to our collective self-esteem because in our country, which is a capitalistic patriarchal society, we are valued by profit. And so we are a nonprofit, which is really the least interesting thing. It's just a tax designation. All it means is you take the profits and you roll them back into the corporation instead of giving them to owners or shareholders. That's the only difference, right? As far as the difference between a profit and nonprofit. Of course, the structures are different, but because there is a non-profit, oh well, what is valued? Valued as profit, right? and and so we're valued, we're talked about by what we're not. But if you say, oh, I run a small business, you know what I mean? Like, oh, what's your business? Oh, it's a foundation. Oh, okay, right? Because it is
Hmm.
a small business, or it's a
Right.
media, it could be a medium business. Like,
Right.
and I had somebody on the podcast, it's been a while and I can't remember who it was, but I remember what she said. And she said, like, I look at it as I run two businesses because I am taking care of the clients, but I'm also taking care of the donors. So from my perspective as a business owner, I'm just taking care of my clients. That's right. My job is to, take care of them, find them, enroll them, coach them, set them free. All right. But she's like, I'm doing that, and I'm also finding donors, taking care of, right? And she said, so I basically have two sides to this, whereas like, and I'm like, whoa, right? And plus, there's a board, so there's a lot of components. My dog just came in for the recording.
I love it. That's my
Yeah.
cat.
he we had it's a long story, but we have two older dogs, and the one of them passed away. So now he comes and sits with me a lot more than he used to, because he doesn't want to be alone downstairs. But all right. So I just want to go back a little bit. What made you want to start the foundation in the first place? Because I do know that a lot of folks, not a lot of folks, I do meet people who had something like this that was really a life-changing experience. And sometimes they, oh, I'm going to start a nonprofit. I'm going to start a foundation. And I'm not always sure that's the right move. Um, and and also I understand the place where you're coming from, as far as there was probably some gaps or something. Like there was something that wasn't meeting your needs when all of this happened to you.
Yeah, well, the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, I call the mothership. There's a lot of smaller cystic fibrosis foundations like myself, with the Bonnell Foundation. But when we went to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation 30 years ago, and things have changed, but they said, sorry, we're a fundraising agency. We can't help you. You need to get information and find other parents somewhere else through your doctor. And right then, because our daughter was diagnosed at 3 months, we diagnosed her, but at 3 months, we have nowhere to go. We're lost at sea. So I was like, there's nowhere to go. I need to make a place for parents to go. So that was when I thought about it. But you're in the midst of the diagnosis, and are we going to have a second child, which we did. And then it was, but I'm working, and then trying to figure out when it was the right time to do the foundation. So in 2010, I started the foundation. And then in 2019, I left journalism and decided to do the foundation full time. But we were doing so much even before 2019. It's just that as soon as I could give it my full time attention, we started to soar a little bit more because
Well,
obviously,
sure.
yeah, giving it
So what is
attention.
the foundation? How does the foundation help?
So we give financial assistance, lung transplant grants, and education scholarships to people with cystic fibrosis. At anybody with cystic fibrosis, parents can apply. Nothing is based on your income. We don't do that. If you have a need or for a copay, or you're going to college, we and you are awarded a grant. Um, then we will help pay for college as well. So that's the financial side of it. Then we have mentoring programs, and we have a CF masterclass that talks to parents in Egypt and Jordan and Thailand and Turkey, all over the place. It is like stepping back in time medically in some other countries. It's very sad. They either don't have vitamins or they don't have medications, and their kids are dying before they're even teenagers, whereas here the life expectancy is so much longer. So we're trying to raise awareness about that, and we advocate and do a podcast and do a lot of different things. We have a Spanish page, and we're trying to get an Arabic page just so there's more information out there. So it's a lot of that as well.
Wow. So a lot of education all over the world.
I traveled to Egypt and met CF families there, and it was the most incredible thing I've ever done, because everyone there, when I went 2 years ago, was malnourished. All the people with CF, the parents are out of their minds because they want help and they want medication. And it was just it was just incredible because just talking to them about, okay, you might not have some of the same medications we have, but here's some alternatives. And, they cried, we talked, most of them could speak English. I could not speak any Arabic, which I felt really bad about, but I'm trying to learn Spanish and I'm so bad at language, unlike my kids who are like, yeah, I'm fluent in Spanish and, but I'm trying. So it was really good to connect. And like with anything, like they're my family, they're my people. I still talk to them on WhatsApp, and I just checked in with everybody actually probably 2 hours ago. How are you doing? What's happening? So yeah, every time I talk to somebody in a different country, I'm like, well, now we're family because the CF
Right.
community is so small.
Mm, right, right. So what was the biggest for you as far as starting the foundation? What was the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge, there were so many because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like literally one foot in front of the other. Okay, I have to get approved by the city and the state and then the feds. And people were willing. I think it was probably fundraising. It was probably, I hated asking people for money. And then I started to realize, well, I'm not asking for myself. It's for the foundation. And that's where a lot of growth has come in, where now I'm like, I ask away and I'm always, oh, how can this help my foundation? Thinking that way. So I think um initially, like, it was easy to get the board going because all my friends were like, yeah, we're in, how
Yeah,
can we help you, so that was the easiest part, is getting the board together. And then it was just growing it. We actually got to a point where I said to the board, do you know where every penny is going in our foundation? Who can tell me? I know where things are, but like, do you know how much we spend in office supplies? Nobody knew. And I said, that is not right. Like, everybody needs to know. So we had a strategic planner, financial planner, and I said, everybody needs to know where every penny is. Um, that was the most helpful thing that we did. And from that point, everything increased. Volunteers, everything, what we brought in, it was just knowledge, being aware, and moving forward, and growth. It was really a big growth period for us.
that's amazing. All right, and okay, so I love this story because you're really, like taking accountability as far as, hey, where's all this money getting, upping that investment. I am interested because was I was in PR in a past, not in media, but I dealt with the media. I had the skill set, right? I went to journalism school, all those things. And it's just a quick story. When many years ago, like 2010, around the same time, my kids' school that they had just enrolled them in. So my daughter is autistic, and I was looking for a school, and I found the most precious place on the planet, which was actually a St. Louis public neighborhood school. So who knew? Um, by far more advanced than all the fancy private schools I toured. Anyway, I moved my kids there, and the principal said, hey, we're on the closed list. And I don't want to scare you, and I said, listen, you take care of my kids, I'll take care of your school. And we made a deal. I said, I will make sure the school doesn't close. You don't, and so I partnered with a woman in the neighborhood who was a pastor. She's a pastor in the neighborhood, little tiny redheaded fireball, and and I did the media, and we kept the school open. But in that moment, I felt like it was this culmination of all of these skills and contacts that I had created throughout my life that I activated, right? Like I already had everything I needed to do this. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
and in a way that I think there's two things I want to explore with you. But first is this idea of using our skill set, just finding ourselves in the perfect position with this unique set of skills. But then, second, if you're listening to this and thinking, but I don't have this kind of background, what kind of wisdom can you share or I share with the folks who want to enroll people, who want to communicate, who want to get people on their side? So let's start with the first part first. Like, did it feel that way for you, as there's this idea of like, I am somehow called into this. Like everything in my life has been actually preparing for me for this, and I didn't realize it.
Yeah, I absolutely felt that. Is with the diagnosis. I went from journalism, being on radio and TV is my passion, and cystic fibrosis is my purpose. When Molly was diagnosed, I was like, "Oh my gosh, my life makes sense now." It finally everything clicked in my brain. I'm like, "This is why I'm here, to do this and to do the foundation." And I've never looked back. People ask me, "Don't you miss radio or television?" I mean, who doesn't miss the power of that, being able to get a governor on and talk to anybody that you want to, within an hour. But I never looked back. And that's when I realized all the tools that I have, all the expertise. I'm doing podcasts now on, with the foundation. So yes, it's just huge. And I just thought, I am still a storyteller. I'm telling the story of cystic fibrosis and the people and the scientists. I mean, scientists are my Taylor Swift. They're who I love. They're just, it's just a whole different world. So, absolutely. And I think sometimes, plus, who wants to hear, well, you're a former news reporter, right? Everybody's like, yeah, 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 yeah. But I mean, it was my life. That was 25 years of my life. So, but yes, you carry it forward and then you just expand and take everything that you've learned and put it into the foundation. And I will say, for a little bit, I fought it like, oh, I'm not a news reporter anymore. And then I thought, why am I fighting this? It's who I am,
Right.
So when I embraced it, again, the programs took off. We have a CF master class, local and abroad, and it's just great.
I think sometimes we focus on what we don't have instead of what we do have, right? And so, because I coach new people in fundraising, and sometimes I say, I did a workshop the other day, and this woman said, I'm new to St. Louis. We're a little cliquey here. I'm new to St. Louis. I have acquaintances, but I don't have friends. How can I raise money without really close friends? And I thought, so in her mind, she created a narrative that first of all, you have to fundraise, you need close friends or contacts, and second, whatever she had, it wasn't the right thing. And those are just stories that you tell yourself. I'm like, you could tell yourself a story that I actually have acquaintances, which is actually better, right? Because not all your friends are going to be invested in the same things you are. Like I said, you have everything. And one of the lessons of this workshop is like, you have everything you need if you decide that you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I've never
Mhm.
done grant. Oh, like, and I think those thoughts are the same things that, as we started this conversation about like not seeing yourself as a business owner or a leader or whatever. Like, I really believe that, you have what you need to be successful if you believe that you have it, right? Um, and and so that's what I was hearing from your story was, um you know I have I have like, you had the context, you had the storytelling ability. It's just putting it into a different forum.
Mhm.
And whatever you didn't know, you learned how to fundraise, right? You learned, like, no one wants, like, it is very vulnerable. You're the helper, you're the carer, right? It's to ask somebody for money. And it's such a beautiful lesson too, like in partnership, in receptivity. That's what I love about fundraising, because it's such a beautiful lesson, not just in learning to ask for things, but for receiving things and for trusting people, trusting the universe to give you what you need, and bring the right people to you. That's the beauty for me.
Right. And, there's been occasions where I was getting some funding and I asked for double. I thought, what are they going to say? They'll say no. And then they didn't. They said,
Right.
okay. I was like, what? So yeah, you just ask. The worst someone can say is, no, we can't do that much, but we'll do this much.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
that was a huge thing.
and yeah, that's great because hey, no is just okay. Yeah, all right. Well, what could you do? You know? And so what would you say to those folks who aren't, 25 years of storytelling, who can't get the governor on the phone in an hour? How how could they, if folks are listening to this, the executive director, CEO, to grow that base, that community of support? Because that's truly what I think actually, like, we can't do this alone, right? No,
Right.
no one can do this alone. So how do you enroll people, and how do you use, and maybe talk a little bit about your storytelling?
Well, I think no one needs to be a journalist or whatever, because I say this about advocacy too, for for laws and bills and things. If you can write a letter, you don't have to be flying to DC. You don't have to be flying to your state capital. Whatever you're doing is supporting everyone's efforts. So if you're a stay-at-home person, or you've got a full-time job and you have 1 hour a day to fundraise, just start by thinking about who is easiest to get at first. And so you get someone and then you build on that. Well, would you like to be in the same partnership as, this company or this business down the street from you? Like, we can cross promote each other. And then you get talking bigger and bigger and keep growing. I think wherever you're at, there is so much room to grow. And everybody has different strengths, and like we're talking about, you really need to recognize and pat yourself on the back that, this is my strength. I don't want to go in and talk to people, but I am great on the phone. I will talk on the phone and say, hey, you know what, my friend, Marianne is coming in tomorrow to meet with you in person, but I'm just setting up all her visits. Like, whatever it is, you get a good person on the phone, and you're warm and friendly and you set this up. Like, there are a lot of different ways to go about that. And then as far as storytelling, I always say that it's conversational. Um, the shorter, the better. It doesn't necessarily always have to be short, but I always say write out or think about what you're going to say and then cut it in half, because we do all tend to ramble. I do it too. And I always have to edit it down and look at it and think, well, this detail might not be so necessary. But I also like to paint a picture so people can see, you know, the vision, or see exactly what's happening. When I talk about things that happen to my kids, I want people to see it. Like, there was a situation where I was fighting, and by fighting, I just mean advocating for my daughter's medication in a pharmacy. So when I tell that story, I always include the part where I said to the pharmacist, all these signs hanging up in the pharmacy that say you're going to help people, like, you're not following. All your signage just screams, we're here to help, and I can't get this medication for my kid, which is a very long story, but it had to do with prior authorization, and there was nothing we could do about it. And in the end, the pharmacist gave us enough medication to last us until the next day, when the hospital opened again and could continue getting prior authorization for this medication. But we couldn't afford not to get the medication. So I think you're telling the story. You want them to hear the desperation or the joy in your story, to paint the picture. Like, it can be boring sometimes to listen to someone talk, or to read a story that's like, okay, you're not grabbing me. You need the emotion of it, because people can relate to that and they want to.
They do. The word of the year for last year was authentic, and I think that's people crave. It was 2023 was the word of the year, was authenticity, and that's what people crave, right? They want the truth. They want to hear the truth. It doesn't have. I always tell them, it doesn't have to be perfect or polished. It just has to be the true, real thing that's going on. That's what people want to connect with. They want to know. In the past, in the nonprofit space. It was more about like polishing things, and having this more perfect presentation. And now I think it's about just telling the story in a real way. Um, and I want to just talk a little bit more about, as far as, in your storytelling, how do you connect to people around this issue that they may or may not be familiar with, or may or not have any, like, I don't know anyone. Like, how do you connect people to your cause? Whether they have like a personal experience, or do you look for people with personal experience? Like, how do I identify your audience? Maybe that's the question I'm asking.
Well, it's funny because whenever I talk to someone, either they do have a CF connection or they remember, isn't that, your baby tastes salty, or isn't that the disease where your baby tastes salty, which it is, it's because of the sweat and everything. But if not, maybe they have a child with a rare disease. And actually, this is a great example. When I was talking with lawmakers, we were testifying, and I said to them, it was about an issue. I said, if you don't know someone with a rare disease or a chronic illness, I promise you, you will. And then I told my story, and the sponsor of our bill has Becker's MD. And then after we testified, they started opening up about either a disease they had. Four of them then told their story. And it's everybody wants to connect. So that's what it is. It's actually, I was at the gym this morning and this woman was talking about working in the health industry and wondered if I had any connection to it. And I was like, well, I have two daughters with cystic fibrosis. Like, so it's always there. And that's one of the biggest things that I say to everybody is keep your karma, keep it open, keep your willingness to share open, because there are so many people I've connected with about being open, and we all help each other, because people who have a child with a chronic illness or a rare disease, everybody can relate to the same thing. You're talking to the insurance company a million times a year. You all have the same frustrations and successes and challenges. So it's really important.
Yeah. I love what you say about being open. One of the things I work with people on is like releasing the outcome. So what I mean by that is I'm not in conversation with you. Like, I can hold two things to be true at the same time. Like, maybe I'm having a conversation with you because I want you to be a donor. And also, I'm okay either way. I'm just here to connect with you, right? In a real authentic way. If that leads, but because what happens is, and what I'm hearing from you, this is the lesson that I teach, is you don't know what's on the other side. There could be so many more possibilities that you hadn't even thought of, because you just I want a sponsorship, right? Like, and then you get to talk, like, wait, maybe this would be so much, you know and maybe they're, oh, we do some volunteer programs, maybe they might want to participate in that. And so now you're really hearing what the person is saying, instead of what, like trying to filter what you want to hear. And that's when the possibilities emerge. And so that's what you're saying, that openness, I call it release the outcome, but I think it's the same thing, of just being like open to like what people are sharing, what people are, and then what you have, because there could be an alignment that you never even knew existed. And same with your lawmakers, right? Like, maybe you're out to talk about one thing, but you're going to throw that out because now, okay, now I get it, because I'm hearing what they're saying about, they understand because they've had their own chronic illness experiences, and now we're all sharing from that place. That may not even have been the place that you went in for or wanted them, but that's okay, right? Release
Right,
the outcome.
right.
Let it
And there,
flow.
yes, so many stories. When I was at the radio station, as a matter of fact, we had about seven stations. So I was in the all news station, and then there was a sports station. Um, and one of the sports guys came over to me and said, "Oh my gosh, I just found out I was a carrier for cystic fibrosis," because he had heard all the public service announcements that I do. And so, talked to him and said, don't freak out. You got to see if your wife's a carrier before you know if you're, could possibly have children with CF. Like, there's all of that. It's so big. And it was so funny. Then I went to this fundraising event for another nonprofit of one of my friends. This was a couple years ago. And, radio, even though we do social media in radio, like television, everybody recognizes you right away. Well, I was at this nonprofit event, and this man and his wife asked me what I did. And I said, oh, I had a foundation that helps families with cystic fibrosis. And he said to me, oh my gosh, you should talk to this reporter at WWJ. Her name is Laura Bonnell. She has kids with cystic fibrosis. And I was like, that's me.
That's me.
And he was like, what? I'm like, no, I am Laura Bonnell. So it is funny. It just in conversation, there is so much. And now they still check in with me regularly. So it's just cute. And it doesn't matter if everybody is a donor or a sponsor. They're connected with
They're
you.
connected, right? They're in your orbit because you never know who they know, right? And there's
Mhm.
all kinds of ways to support. And even when you're just they're like love you and care about you, and they may not be the good fit for a donor, but they're going to tell, oh my god, you should talk to this person, or and that's the good vibe, that's the good energy out there. All right, I have three quick questions. Okay, first, how are your girls doing today? You said they're 30 and 27, right?
Yes, which is, it's wonderful and crazy. Like, how does it happen so fast? But yes, they're 30 and 27, and they're doing great. They're on a new drug called Trikafta, which corrects the underlying condition of cystic fibrosis. It's not a cure, but if you ever want to hear the story of science in work, science in motion, when that drug hit their bodies day one, they felt changes. Their sinuses cleared. My daughter, who would cough for an hour every morning and then all day, day four, stopped coughing. Like, I was crying by myself because she was journaling everything she was feeling. It's unbelievable. So, but again, not a cure. They still get sick, but that's huge. So they're doing well. One lives in London, England. She got her master's and she has no intentions of moving home anytime soon. And then the other lives in Chicago and she's very happy there. And since she's been on this drug, she's been running a lot and hopes to run a marathon in
Wow.
October. So
Wonderful.
it's very cool.
Okay, that is so amazing to hear. And they must be so proud of you and what you've done.
They are, and it's so sweet. And, if ever I need, like, hey, how come this social media thing isn't taken off or whatever, they'll give me direction. And then I'm like, oh, okay, got to do it this way or,
Yeah, yeah.
target someone. Yeah.
All right,
So they're
and
great.
are you a Detroit Lions fan?
Of course. I mean, who
How
isn't?
excited are you
Want me
right
to go
now?
grab a couple jerseys from the closet? My husband has so many Lions jerseys as well. Yeah, we're very excited. Although I have to say, I couldn't tell you who they're playing like next or anything like that. My
Uh-huh.
husband and my kids could, but yeah, very exciting. And actually, I have a great story about Matt Stafford, a former Detroit Lion,
Yeah,
but I mean, just the nicest guy. I won't bore you with the story, even though it wouldn't be boring, but I mean, great. And just resilience, right? And that
yeah,
coach, oh my gosh. Yeah,
yeah.
it's
It's
huge.
something else to change a culture. And I
It
think that's
is.
a lesson of us, like what you can take away from something like that is it takes years to really change a culture. And
Yes.
like a true commitment, even if you think it's not going right or not going fast enough or whatever, a cultural shift takes a while to really think differently, feel differently, act differently, right? And sustain that over time. And that's what I see happening there. All right, last question. I'm in St. Louis, you're in Michigan, but if we ever wound up in the same karaoke bar, what's your go-to number? Because I love karaoke, that's my thing. So,
Oh my gosh. Jeez. Oh my gosh. So many songs. Okay, it's by Radio. Oh gosh, what's it called? It's my favorite song, and I actually wanted my girls to do the song. It's called Rush by Radio. I don't remember the name of the artist, but they're like older artists, and Radio Dynamite or something. It's a great song. It's a fabulous song. I wish I could remember it. I love everything that Mumford and Sons do.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah. And I love Queen songs. I can sing them all. Everything. The Who. I mean, but yeah, there's so many
Awesome.
great
I have
songs.
to remember, okay. Um,
I have to Google. Maybe I can find it really quick.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. Okay, and while you do that, I'm just going to say if you're interested in learning more about the Bonnell Foundation, all the contact information it'll be in the show notes, and it looks like you're on Facebook and Instagram. That's kind of where you spend your time, and you
yes.
have your podcast, Living with Cystic Fibrosis. So people can check that out, and you're sharing your expertise with everyone.
Yes, please go to our website and email us if you have any needs or thoughts or ideas. I found my favorite Big Audio
Big
Dynamite
Audio
Rush.
Dynamite.
Yes, and the lyrics are, ironically enough,
Rush for
if I have my time again, I would do it all the same.
yes.
And I would not change a single thing, even when I was to blame. But I mean, the lyrics are amazing, and it's got a great,
Like
that is
rush
my,
for a change of atmosphere. That one.
yes,
How can I go where I'm
yes.
going? Gotta get myself right out of here.
I mean, and look
Somehow
at
I
these
stayed
guys
thin
when
while
they
the
were
other guys
young.
got fat. Oh yeah. That's
Yeah,
a Clash. That's
they're
Clash. Well,
they are
members of the
just,
Clash became Big Audio Dynamite. I
yeah,
believe.
they're so I love it.
Yep.
Love it.
Awesome,
Yeah.
Laura. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and time with us today.
You're
And again,
welcome. Thank you.
everything's in the show notes. So if you want to reach out to Laura, I'm sure you'd love to hear from anyone. And all the info is in the show notes. And we'll see you next time on the Influential Nonprofit.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Marianne.